She moved into her dream home and died just 23 days later. But before she took her last breath, she left one chilling voicemail. He was in the basement, and he knew my name. Over the last 15 years, 5 owners of this house have died the same way. This is the story of the home that was never meant to be sold. The house at 1827, Quarry Lane, was never supposed to attract attention. It wasn't grand or historic. It wasn't haunted-looking in the way horror movies like to show. It was painfully ordinary, a peeling white 2-story home on the edge of a small Pennsylvania town, with a sagging porch, sun-faded shutters, and a mailbox that leaned slightly to the left. Most houses had histories. This one had victims. 5 owners in 15 years, and every one of them died inside its walls. Detective Daniel Whitford didn't believe in curses, hauntings, or urban legends. He believed in patterns, evidence, and the simple fact that people didn't just drop dead for no reason, especially not 5 times in a row inside the same isolated home. But as he parked his car in front of the property on a rain-soaked Thursday morning, he felt something he hadn't felt in a long time, a quiet, unwelcome pressure in the as if someone was watching the house, or the house was watching him. The latest victim was Emily Carter, a 32-year-old mother who had moved in with her 8-year-old daughter, Lily, less than a month earlier. Emily had been excited. A fresh start. New school district. A backyard big enough for a dog. She lasted 23 days. Her daughter survived only because she had been away for a weekend visit with her grandmother. Emily never picked her up, but the most horrifying part wasn't the sudden death, or the lack of suspects, or the complete absence of evidence. It was the voicemail she left at 2:14 a.m., 3 days before her body was found. A voicemail Daniel had listened to more times than he cared to admit. He was in the basement, and he knew my name. I didn't tell him my name. A scraping sound, a gasp, a dull thud, and then silence. That message was the reason. Daniel stepped over the threshold of 1827, Quarry Lane, with a sinking feeling deep in his chest. The inside of the house was cleaner than he expected. Emily had been meticulous. Toys neatly stored in bins, kitchen spotless, bedroom organized. But the air felt wrong, thick, heavy, almost humid despite the December cold outside. Emily's body had been found in the living room. Face down near the sofa. No bruises. No injuries. No forced entry. Nothing missing. Cause of death: sudden cardiac arrest. But the position of her body was strange. One arm stretched toward the hallway. Fingertips bruised from scratching, reaching, trying to get away. The medical examiner said the heart simply stopped. No drugs. No toxins. No genetic issues. Just stopped. Daniel knelt where Emily's body had been and looked toward the basement door. Paint chipped around the doorknob. Scratches. 3 long, uneven marks, not new. He ran his fingers over them. The wood felt splintered, rough. Behind him, his partner, Detective Olivia Grant, spoke quietly. "You're thinking it too, right?" "Yeah," Daniel murmured. She wasn't reaching for the front door. She was reaching for the basement. Olivia exhaled slowly. "You listened to the voicemail again?" He nodded, and she wasn't alone. The previous owner's files were thick, but always missing something. Each case had been ruled heart failure, stroke, or natural but sudden cause. But Daniel saw the pattern no one wanted to acknowledge. Each owner died between 17 and 32 days after moving in. Each death occurred at night. Each death occurred on the ground floor, never upstairs, and each victim had called 911 or a friend within 24 to 48 hours of dying, reporting noises from the basement. The basement, the oldest part of the house, built with dark, uneven stone instead of concrete. The foundation dated back to the 1890s. While the rest of the home was rebuilt in the 1970s after a fire, only one thing had survived that fire: the basement. When Daniel opened the basement door, the smell hit him immediately. Damp, cold, metallic, the scent of earth that hasn't been moved in a long time. The steps creaked under his weight. Halfway down, he froze. On the floor below, in the dust, he saw footprints, bare footprints, larger than Emily's, larger than any. Victims. Fresh enough to still show detail, but that wasn't the biggest problem. There was only one set of footprints leading from the bottom of the stairs to the far wall, and none coming back. Daniel's voice was barely a whisper. Liv, turn off your flashlight. Why? Just do it. She clicked it off. In the pitch-black basement, Daniel waited 0.1 second, 0.2.3, then a faint glow emerged near the far wall. A thin vertical line of light, like something shining through a crack in the stone. A hidden door. He flicked his light on again. The wall wasn't flush. A slab of stone had been installed only halfway into the foundation, leaving a hairline gap. It's not a door, Olivia murmured. It's a panel. Daniel pressed his hand against it. Cold, too cold. Something's behind this, he said, or someone. Olivia added that it took a forensics team 4 hours to safely pry the stone panel open. Behind it was a narrow chamber, no more than 4 feet wide and 7 feet deep. Stone walls, dirt floor, no lights, and lying on the floor, curled into a skeletal fetal position, was the body of a man. Or what used to be a man, skin grey and paper thin, teeth missing, hands twisted unnaturally inward. But the most disturbing detail was his face. His mouth was frozen in a wide, unnatural grin, not just stretched, carved, the corners torn. Like they had been pulled long after the man stopped resisting. Olivia whispered, "What the hell happened to him?" Daniel swallowed. The real question is, how long has he been here? A forensic anthropologist would later determine that the man had died between 10 and 20 years ago. But that wasn't the part that made every member of the team go silent. His fingerprints matched someone in the national database, Henry Cole. A real estate agent from the 1990s. The same man who had sold the house to every victim's predecessor, but he had been declared dead in 1998. Drowned in a boating accident. So how was he here? How was his body sealed into the basement wall? And why did all victims, including Emily, report a male voice from the basement that knew their name? The more Daniel dug, the darker the story became. Henry Cole hadn't died in a boating accident. He had disappeared, and just before he vanished, he had been accused by multiple families of threatening them when they backed out of buying Quarry Lane. One statement from 1997 stood out. He said the house needed someone alive inside, that it couldn't be empty, that it wouldn't allow him to leave unless someone replaced him. Daniel read that line 5 times. Someone replaced him. He finally understood the pattern. Every new owner lived just long enough for the house to accept them. To feed on them, keep them, hold them prisoner the way Henry had been held. Was the house killing them? Or was something inside the house killing anyone who tried to leave it empty? Emily died the night before she planned to spend a full week at her mother's house with her daughter. She was going to leave the house alone, just like every victim before her. Daniel felt something icy crawl up his spine. The house didn't want to be empty. For the next week, Daniel barely slept. He read every record, every interview, every scrap of data related to Quarry Lane. The more he discovered, the more the pieces aligned into something horrifying, almost supernatural, but disturbingly plausible. The original property owner in 1891 had been a man named Elias Rourke, a recluse rumored to be involved in occult rituals. Neighbors claimed he believed the earth under the house was alive, that it demanded offerings of presents to remain calm. To remain closed, Rourke vanished in 1899. His body was never found. Henry Cole's real estate company had bought the land decades later. Cole took special interest in the property, showed it more than any other listing. He spent nights inside alone. He refused to let it remain vacant. When he tried to leave permanently, tried to stop returning to the house, he disappeared, and now he was found interred inside its wall, alive or dead. Daniel didn't want to imagine, but one thing was clear. The house was not simply unsafe. It was a trap, and it didn't care who lived in. It just needed someone. Emily had accidentally broken the cycle by planning to leave for a week. Too long for the house to tolerate, and now, with her gone, The house was empty, vacant. Hungry. The night of the discovery. Daniel stayed outside the property in his car, watching the dark silhouette of the house. Olivia had begged him to go home. He refused. Something about the place made his skin crawl, but he also felt an unexplainable pull, like he needed to understand it completely before he stepped away. T3:17 a.m. Something moved in the upstairs window. A figure, tall, still, watching him. Daniel froze. An O1 was supposed to be inside. The house had been completely cleared, sealed, and padlocked, but the figure didn't blink, didn't shift, didn't move at all. Just stared down at him with impossible stillness. Daniel grabbed his radio. Olivia. Someone's in the house. He stepped out of the car, heart pounding. Rain hammered the ground. His flashlight beam trembled slightly as he approached the porch. The front door was still locked. He turned slowly, lifting the flashlight toward the window. Empty, nothing. Just curtains swaying slightly, but the house felt different now, like it had noticed him, like it remembered him. His phone buzzed. .1 new voicemail unknown. Number timestamp 3:17 a.m. The same minute he saw the figure, hand shaking. Daniel pressed play. Scraping sounds, shuffling, breathing, then a voice. Detective Whitford. You don't have to leave. The house has room for you. A long, wet dragging sound, then, it knows your name. The message ended. Daniel backed away slowly, stumbling toward his car. The house stood silently in the rain, dark and waiting, not haunted, not cursed, alive, and now, it had chosen him. They thought the house had finally gone silent. They were wrong. The recording began with a low static hum, followed by a single trembling breath, a man's breath. Then the whisper came, broken, exhausted, almost dissolved into the distortion. He wasn't alone. There was someone else in the walls. The voice belonged to Detective Mark Holden. The message was recorded 11 minutes after the end of the first investigation, and 4 minutes before the rescue team found him in the basement crawl space, unconscious, blooded, and barely alive. He shouldn't have survived, and yet he did. The continuation of this nightmare begins on the night he woke up. Mark regained consciousness in St. Rose Medical Center long after sunset. His vision wavered between white ceiling lights and blurred shadows moving behind curtains. A nurse was speaking softly somewhere nearby, and someone else, a man, murmured into a radio. But none of it registered. His mind was still inside the house, still hearing the scraping under the floorboards, still seeing the thing he couldn't fully describe. When he sat up, every muscle burned. His hands shook uncontrollably. His right wrist had deep bruises from the handcuffs someone else had put on him. He didn't remember how he got free. He didn't remember crawling through the dirt. But he did remember the face pressed against the slats of the crawlspace, watching him with something far colder than intent to kill. It watched him like it knew him, and it smiled. When Dr. Mayers entered the room, she froze in the doorway. Mark's heart rate had tripled. The monitors screamed. Sweat ran down his face. He stared straight ahead, his lips pale. Detective Holden, she said gently, you're safe. You're in the hospital. You've been unconscious for 2 days. 2 days, long enough for the crime scene to be sealed, long enough for the department to close. The case as a contained incident long enough for evidence to go missing. The thought hit him like a knife. He ripped the 4-line out. The alarm beeped wildly. Where is my phone? He gasped. The doctor moved toward him. Detective, you need my phone. His voice was raw. Someone sent me something before I passed out. The doctor hesitated, then nodded to an officer at the door. The officer retrieved a sealed evidence bag. Inside was the phone. Cracked. Blood-specked. The screen shattered like a spiderweb. Mark's fingers trembled as he unlocked it. There it was. A message. Received at 3:04 a.m. No number. No contact photo. Just 3 words, you missed him. Below it, a photo, the basement. The same angle he remembered from crawling out, but in the far corner. Behind him, barely visible in the darkness, a figure was standing tall, motionless and smiling. Mark dropped the phone. That was the moment he understood everything they found in that house, the victims. The symbols carved into the beams, the hidden room, was not the full story. They had only brushed against something deeper, something older, something that did not live in that house. But used it. He was discharged against medical advice the next evening. His badge was temporarily suspended pending psychiatric evaluation, but that didn't matter. He needed to go back, not to the house, but to the files. At 2:27 a.m., he slipped into the archives of the 9th Precinct. Rookie Officer Danielle Mercer spotted him, but instead of stopping him, she followed. "Holden," she whispered. "You're not supposed to. Someone moved my evidence," he said without turning. "I'm finding out who." Danielle swallowed hard. "You think someone on the inside?" "I think someone knew we'd come close." He opened the old case box, the one from the family murdered in 2009. Inside, papers were missing. Photos gone. Only the autopsy report remained, but something else was in there, something new. A USB drive black. Unmarked. This was not police issued. Mark plugged it into a dusty terminal. A single folder appeared. House ZERO inside, 17 video files, timestamps ranging from 1998 to 2024, all labeled with one word. Occupant. They watched the first video. The footage was grainy. Timestamped October 19th, 1998. A man held the camera. Walking through the kitchen of the same house. Younger, cleaner, newly renovated. He whispered nervously, "Day 1. He said I'd hear scratching. He said that's normal." Mark froze. The man on the screen was Officer Dean Rourke. A missing cop whose case file was accidentally purged in 2001. They kept watching Diane the footage. Rourke walked to the basement door. His hand shook as he gripped the handle. Day 3. It stopped scratching. Now it whispers. It knows I can hear it. He swung the camera around. His eyes were hollow. Terrified. Day 6. I think it climbed into the walls. Danielle covered her mouth. Rourke opened the basement. Door. Darkness. Silence. He turned the camera toward himself. Again, I'm not the first and I won't be the last. It's choosing someone new, someone who comes here with a badge. Mark's stomach twisted beside him. Danielle went pale. Rourke leaned close to the lens. Detective, if you're watching this, he likes you. The feed cut to static. They opened the second video. This one showed the house from outside. Nighttime. A figure came to the window. Tall, gaunt, almost skeletal, and pressed its forehead against the glass. Its smile was unnaturally wide, not human, not fully. Danielle recoiled. What the hell is that? Mark whispered, "That's the same figure I saw in the crawlspace." The camera zoomed in. The figure slowly raised its hand and slid a note under the window frame. The video ended. Play the next one. Danielle whispered, but Mark's phone buzzed. A message, unknown number, stop watching. They ignored it and played the third video. This one was terrifying in its simplicity. The camera sat on the basement floor, unmoving, for 34 minutes. Nothing happened. Then, at minute 35, the beam creaked. Something brushed past the lens. A pale hand. Long fingers. Nails cracked and dirty. The hand reached for the camera, slowly. Then the whisper came. A voice not meant for human lungs. A voice dry. Almost brittle. His mind next. The screen glitched violently. Danielle stepped backward. Holden. That sounded like it said your name. He said nothing, because he knew. He had heard that voice before. The night he nearly died. At 4:12 a.m., emergency lights flashed through the archive windows. Officers rushed into the hallway. Someone screamed. Mark and Danielle ran toward the commotion. In the main lobby. Officer Brooks stood with a hand over his mouth, shaking uncontrollably. On the wall beside him, someone had written in thick black marker, "Stop watching." But that wasn't the worst part. Below the writing, taped to the wall, was a Polaroid.it showed Mark and Danielle in the archive room from 5 minutes ago. Standing in front of the computer, Danielle whispered there was no one else in there. Mark. But Mark wasn't looking at the photo anymore. He was looking at what was behind them in the image. In the darkness of the archive hallway, a tall figure stood at the edge of the frame. Watching, smiling, they tried to track the intruder. No alarm was triggered. No cameras captured movement. No doors opened because whatever had been inside was still inside. Mark pulled Danielle aside. "This thing isn't haunting the house," he said. "It's following the investigation. It's moving with the evidence." Danielle whispered, "And now it's moving with you." At dawn, they returned to the house. It had been sealed by police tape, but the front door stood wide open. The inside was freezing. Completely still. On the kitchen table sat a laptop. Not theirs, not from the evidence room. The screen displayed a paused video. Mark hit play. The footage showed the crawlspace recent hours. Old. A body lay inside, face down, neck twisted, skin pale and stiff. Danielle gasped. It was Officer Brooks, the same man who saw the message on the lobby wall. Killed for seeing too much. In the video, the camera slowly lifted, someone picking it up. The angle shifted towards something carved into the beam above the body. Fresh scratches. Deep. Violent. 6 words. He watches who watches him. Then the figure holding the camera turned it toward its own face. That same impossible smile. That same hollow stare. That same presence from the crawlspace, but this time it whispered something new, something chilling. "Detective, you're almost done. Now come downstairs." The screen went black. Danielle pulled her gun. "Mark, we are leaving. Now." But he was staring at the basement door. What if this is the last chance to stop it? He whispered. Danielle grabbed his arm. What if this is exactly what it wants? He didn't answer. The basement door creaked open. On its own. A cold draft rolled out. Something moved below. Not footsteps, not scraping, breathing, but not one voice. 2. Mark descended first. The air smelled of soil and rust. The walls pulsed with faint vibrations, like something was waiting behind them. Danielle followed. Gun aimed forward. At the bottom of the stairs. The entire basement floor was covered in Polaroids, hundreds, maybe thousands, all showing the same figure, sometimes closer, sometimes watching from afar, sometimes inches from the camera. Danielle knelt. These go back years. Mark picked one up. It was dated 2009, the year the family died. The figure stood behind the father, who looked unaware. Another Polaroid, dated 1998. Officer Rourke screaming into the lens. Another. 2001. A coroner in the morgue. The figure behind him. Another. 2024. Taken in the hospital. Mark's hospital room. The figure stood over his bed, smiling. A low groan echoed behind them. The crawlspace panel slid open. The figure crawled out, impossibly tall, folding itself in half as it stepped into the basement. Skin grey and tight. Eyes sunken. That smile stretching too wide, too calm, too knowing. Danielle fired a warning shot. The figure stopped, turned its head, and spoke in a voice like breaking wood. "You brought her." Danielle froze. "Mark, what does it mean?" The figure took another step. "One must watch, one must carry." Mark realized something. All the previous victims, the father, the mother, the officer, the tenants, one went mad. 1 disappeared. 1 was killed. The pattern, it doesn't choose just one, Mark whispered. It chooses a pair. One to follow. One to finish. The figure tilted its head. "You followed." It pointed along. Cracked finger at Danielle. "She finishes." Danielle fired again, a direct hit to the head. The figure didn't flinch. Instead, it smiled wider, unhinging its jaw until the skin cracked. Mark grabbed Danielle's arm and shoved her toward the stairs. "Run." They sprinted up the steps as the figure lunged forward. its limbs bent at unnatural angles, cracking. Splitting as it crawled up the walls and ceiling, Danielle made it to the kitchen. Mark was half a step behind. The figure reached for his ankle. Danielle turned, fired again and again, screaming. The bullet slowed it, barely, but enough for Mark to break free. They stumbled outside as the front door slammed shut behind them, shaking the entire frame. For a moment. Silence, then a whisper came from inside the house, soft, calm, eerily close. "This house has many doors. You will come back." Back at the precinct, they quarantined the entire case. No one else was allowed access. But that didn't stop what happened next. At 5:43 p.m. Security cameras captured Danielle walking down the hallway, alone at 5:44 p.m. She turned into the evidence room at 5:45 p.m. All cameras cut out simultaneously when they returned seconds later. The room was empty. She was gone. Only one thing was found, a Polaroid on the floor, Danielle in the basement, standing near the crawlspace, eyes dead wide. Frozen in terror, behind her, the figure, smiling. Mark played the last video on the USB. The screen showed Danielle sitting in a dark room, breathing shallowly, trying not to cry. A single phrase was carved into the wall behind her. "She watches now." Then the camera turned to the figure again. Its voice was softer this time, almost tender. "Detective, come finish." The footage ended. Mark stood in the empty evidence room. The lights flickered something. Creaked in the vents above him. He closed his eyes. He knew what he had to do. He reached for his gun, and then his phone. Buzzed. A message, an O number. 2 words. "Doors open." Followed by a photo. The house, front door wide open, waiting. The police stormed the basement, expecting bodies. Instead, they found him, battered, broken, but alive. In front of him. A screen flickered with the last message from the thing that had haunted the house for decades. "You were never the target. You were the warning." On the floor lay a single object, a cracked USB stick. One word scrawled in black marker, "Continue." An officer knelt beside him. "If you open that, there's no going back." He stared at the device, then at the camera watching from the shadows. Knowing the presence that had orchestrated every death was still alive. Still observing. He pressed play. The screen went black, then glitched into a grainy video. A whisper echoed from the darkness, hollow and wet. "I'm not done. And you won't leave alive." The basement lights flickered. Something moved in the shadows behind him. A hand, pale, long, and impossible, reached for his throat. The last thing the room heard was his scream, then silence.